Hello, 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 and welcome to my show. My name is Laura, and you are listening to The Livia Show. Thank you for joining us today. This is actually my second broadcast. I'm very excited about the ability to be back and to share some more exciting and wonderful information with you, my listeners, today. Well, I thought what we would talk about today is a concept called helicopter parents. And I'm not sure how many of you may have heard of helicopter parents or not, but what I'll do today is I'll offer you a little bit of a definition as far as what helicopter parents are, what they do, who they affect, even give you a little bit of a point of reference in terms of, oh my gosh, am I a helicopter parent? And then I'll also talk a little bit about some of the effects that helicopter parenting can have on children and give you a little bit of an inside scoop in terms of what those of us who work in education think about the wonderful, wonderful helicopter parent. So thank you for joining us. We'll get started here in just a few. Alrighty, the helicopter parent. I'm not sure. What? What was that? I can't hear you. There's too many helicopter parents in my midst. Ah, there. That's better. A helicopter parent is a parent naturally who, much like a helicopter, hovers around their children or hovers over their children. Now, we can see helicopter parenting as early as, when our children are infants, but then it's not as big of an issue because we're kind of, as parents of children at that age, we kind of have to hover. It's kind of part of our job description, if you will, is just to be right beside them and to be able to intervene, at any moment should something go wrong. But where we see helicopter parenting kind of becoming an issue, so to speak, is as the children grow. I would probably say senior high is when we can see some of the most troubling helicopter parenting behavior. And some examples of helicopter parenting in probably middle school, high school, and beyond would be parents continuously calling the teachers to get the child's homework assignments, or maybe doing things that the child really could do for him or herself. That could be the parent who comes into the school repeatedly and unannounced. Now, I know that security is different in our schools than it used to be, but when I went to elementary school, nearly anybody could walk into the school at any point in time. The doors were not locked, there was no security to get into certain wings of the school, and so it wasn't uncommon actually to see parents kind of roaming the halls occasionally. So I think the reason that we think this is a big deal now is because security is so much tighter, and that isn't the type of thing that we're used to seeing, which is a lot of parents, in high schools. And so I think when we do see that, we think, oh my goodness, is something wrong? Is your child sick? What's the emergency? Is there some type of natural disaster? But in the case of helicopter parenting, they're just there because they want to check up on their student. So students have a number of different reactions to this. I know that I've seen in helicopter parenting instances with high schoolers, it can be quite embarrassing for them. I know that my son is 17 years old, and God bless him, he's never really given me an issue about being around him or needing to walk so many paces behind him or, drop him off before the movie theater. But I know that isn't the case for all kids. So some kids that have helicopter parents, it can be totally a mortifying situation for them having their parents around. We don't see this as being as much of an issue in elementary school, middle school, or high school, as I said, but where it really becomes problematic, where this helicopter behavior really kind of gets out of control and sometimes even kind of shows the ugly side of itself, is in college. And what I'm going to share with you today about helicopter parenting in college comes from experience. No, I did not have helicopter parents at all, but I am a person who has worked in the field of higher education for about the past 11 years, both as an administrator and as a professor. So I've kind of seen helicopter parenting from two different vantage points, if you will. So, as an administrator, I've gotten calls from parents that are just wanting to know how their child is doing in my program, wanting to know if they're attending meetings like they should be. And I should back up and say that my administrator position is one in which I run a program that helps students who want to go to graduate school. So what we kind of do is we come in and we help these students navigate the path from their undergrad experiences through enrolling in graduate school and ultimately getting a degree. So we're not a class. Students do not have to participate. The hope, however, is that because they've applied for the program, that once they get in, they are going to want to participate just because they will see the value and the benefit of doing so. But anyway, back to my story. I've had parents call me on the phone and say, I see that you sent my son or daughter a piece of mail, with the old snail mail system. What is it? What did you send them? And it's kind of interesting because with privacy issues and all of that, we really are limited in terms of what we can say and what we can disclose. On the other side of the spectrum, in my life as a professor, there is very little that I can share with parents. Yet I've had parents call me about their child's grades, call me about their child's attendance, call me to tell me that their child would not be in class. And in this third situation of the child missing class, it wasn't the type of situation where the child could not have called for him or herself. It was just the parents taking it upon themselves to do that for the child. So that's something that's really been kind of interesting to deal with. And, in times when parents have said, I want to know what grades they're getting, and I say, I'm sorry, I can't disclose that information to you. Your child is a legal adult. And so by law, I'm really only able to release that information or discuss that information with your child. It's really amazing to see how many parents become upset with me because I can't give them the information that they're seeking. They'll say, well, it's my child and I have every right to know, if they're attending class, I'm paying for college and, these are things I have a right to know. To that I say, absolutely, you completely and totally do have a right to know those things. However, I am not allowed to be the person that discloses such information. So I'll tell them they need to talk with their child about this information. And sometimes parents will say, well, they won't talk to me. And then I know that there's, another type of issue probably going on. I'm not saying good issue, bad issue, or anything like that, but that it probably has more to do with the communication issue with the child than it does with me. I have had parents challenge the grades that I've given their children, and I have to back up right there and say my philosophy as an adult educator is that I do not give grades. The students earn the grades, and that is what they receive. So sometimes when I've had a parent say, how could you give my child a B? In high school, she was on the honor roll, and I just don't understand. It must be something with your teaching because she's always been a straight A student. And it's at times like that that I must respectfully say, ma'am, I do not give grades. Your student, your son or daughter earns their grades. And these are the things that they can do to earn their grades. And it's human nature. A lot of parents don't especially appreciate hearing things like that, as I said. But I think the more and more parents get to know that this is how professors will handle situations like that, I think the easier it will become for parents to kind of understand the boundaries, because that's really what this helicopter parenting thing is all about. It's kind of a blurring of boundaries. And in some cases, I'm not sure the parents know where they end and where their child begins, or where their child ends and where they begin. And I have to say, I think that transitioning your child from being a minor to being an adult and having all this responsibility, that can't be an easy task for parents. And as I mentioned earlier, I have a 17-year-old, so I'm about to embark on that journey myself. So I do extend empathy to the parents. I think it can't be easy to not know what your child is up to at all times, like maybe you used to be able to find out. So the long and short of it, I think, with helicopter parenting is, if as parents we do this type of parenting with our children and we hover over them and we treat them kind of like they're fragile or they're glass, and we want to keep every negative thing potentially from crossing their path, if we do those kinds of things, I don't believe anyway that we're really teaching our children how to live, that we're really teaching our children that they need to be responsible for their choices, their decisions, their actions, and by running in and saving the day all the time, we're really not passing that information on to them. And as I mentioned in yesterday's podcast too, I think as parents, one of the things that we hope for our children is that they do grow up to be contributing positive, members of society. And by not exercising good boundaries with our children and by not working to develop those boundaries with our children, we're really kind of putting a damper on that process. So to recap, today we've talked a little bit about helicopter parenting, and I gave you some examples of helicopter parenting, both for little children, and stated that it's much easier and even more socially acceptable to helicopter parent small children than it is as they get older. So we talked about that. I gave you some examples of helicopter parenting that I've seen as a college administrator and a college educator, and I've kind of given you a little bit of insight into what college professionals think when they're dealing with helicopter parents. We also talked a little bit about privacy, and if any of you listening are helicopter parents, welcome to the club. First of all, I think a lot of people find this very challenging, but also know that your child's educator is not messing with you or pulling your leg somehow, trying to tell you that they cannot disclose information. It's very true that they can't. And if you do have issues with this, I would recommend just talking with your young adult child about this, or even contacting the school itself if you have questions or if you want a copy of their data privacy policies and such. I think that might be a good place for you to get that information. Again, I like to close the program by saying parenting isn't an easy job. There isn't one universal manual that we all receive when we give birth or when we adopt our children. There's not something we receive, and it's just if you follow these steps, it's absolutely positively guaranteed that you're going to be a successful parent and you're going to raise a happy child. It's not the case. However, I think a lot of times if we just follow our own intuition, that can be really helpful. Or then if we have somebody that we can kind of bounce and share ideas off of as parents, I think that's really helpful too. So in a future broadcast, I'm going to talk about the concept of the parenting support group for parents of older children, and we'll kind of explore that a little bit. But for now, I do want to thank you for joining me today. And as always, please continue to listen to my podcast. And if you have any suggestions for topics that you would like covered, please don't hesitate to leave a comment on the Spreaker website and let me know. I'm happy to cover those things for you. And again, my general theme is kind of wellness, positivity, and living and reaching one's full potential. So as I said, thank you for joining me, and I look forward to speaking with you very, very soon. We'll talk to you soon, and I'm out.